So this afternoon, we will be talking about the Victorian Age. So the Victorian Age began in the strict sense in 1837 when the 18-year-old Victoria succeeded her uncle, William IV, and became the Queen of England. So in the history of United Kingdom and the British Empire, the Victorian era was the reign of Queen Victoria from June 1837 until her death on January 1901 at the age of 82. So her Diamond Jubilee in 1897 had celebrated her 60th year on the throne. So Queen Victoria was the first British monarch ever celebrated a Diamond Jubilee in the year 1897, which marked the occasion of the 60th anniversary. Queen Victoria was the first British monarch ever celebrated a Diamond Jubilee in the year 1897, which marked the occasion of the 60th anniversary. During this period, England became the world's wealthiest nation, and through the creation and expansion of the British Empire, its most influential colonial power. The Victorian also made the first serious and large-scale attempts to solve the problems of the industrial and democratic revolutions that had taken place during the Romantic Age. The Victorians, recognizing these challenges, made significant efforts to address the problems that arose from the transformative revolutions. We are much closer to the Victorian era than we often realize. Many people alive today were born during the reign of Queen Victoria. Many of us have parents or grandparents who were raised by Victorian mothers and fathers. So, many of us have parents or grandparents who are shaped by the parenting styles, expectations, and social norms prevalent during the Victorian era. So, strict discipline. Victorian parents believe in strict discipline and obedience. Children were expected to be seen and not heard, and disobedience was often met with harsh punishments. And in terms of morality, the Victorian society placed a high value on morality and proper behavior, where children thought to be honest, truthful, and virtuous. This emphasis on the character development continues to be important in many lives and many families today. People still use the word Victorian as a synonym for prude and think of the Victorian era as a time of extreme repression when even furniture legs had to be concealed under heavy brocade clothes so as not to be too suggestive. As what I have said earlier, the Victorian placed a high value on morality and proper behavior. So they believe in a strict social codes and etiquette, and anything considered indecent or immoral was strongly condemned. This includes public display of affection, discussion of sexuality, and even the depiction of certain body parts in art. This view of Victorian is very limited and misleading. In no other period of English culture before or since were new ideas discussed and debated so vigorously by such large segment of society. We have so much to learn from Victorian literature. The writers of this period offers a fascinating variety of artistic responses to a rapidly changing world that is not far from our own. And now let's discuss the historical background and political background. So the Victorian Age was a time of extensive social and political development. In order to clarify the main event and issues of this complicated period, it is convenient to divide the Victorian Age into phase early, middle, and late. The early period 1832 to 1848. Although Queen Victoria did not come to the throne until 1837, we may think of the early Victorian period as beginning in 1832 when Parliament passed the first Reform Bill. So it highlights the significance of the Reform Bill in 1832 as pivotal movement that marked the beginning of a new era in England, even though Queen Victoria didn't ascend to the throne until 1837. So this bill extended voting rights to a wider segment of the population, including the lower middle class, and broke the monopoly of power held by conservative landowners and reducing the political power and increasing the influence of the middle class. From the time of American and French Revolution, England had become increasingly distressed by the needs for democratic reform. So the Reform Bill in 1832, which gave greater power to the middle class by extending the vote to all men owning property worth £10 or more in annual rent. It was a significant step towards more democratic system in England. So the Reform Bill also reduced the power of upper class landowners by redistributing parliamentary representation. So the bill primarily benefited the middle class as it gives voting rights to men who own property worth £10,000, worth £10 in annual rent. The first reform bill demonstrated that social change could take place peacefully without violent revolution and marked the emergence of the middle class as the dominant force in English politics. The first reform bill of 1832 was an important moment in English history, showcasing the potential of for peaceful social change and marking a shift in political power dynamics. It demonstrated the power of peaceful social change, marked the rise of the middle class. So who is Robert Browning? Robert Browning was born on May 7, 1812 and died on December 12, 1889. He was an English poet and a playwright whose dramatic monologues put him high among the Victorian poets. He was noted for irony, characterization, dark humor, social commentary, historical setting, and challenging vocabulary and syntax. So let's discuss the poem My Last Duchess. This poem, perhaps the most popular of Browning's dramatic monologues. The scene in the castle of Duke of Ferra, the speaker in the poem who is a powerful Italian nobleman of the Renaissance period. The Duke is showcasing a painting of his wife to an envoy who has been sent to arrange the details for a second marriage. That was my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call the masterpiece a wonder. Now Fra Pandolf's hands work busily a day. There she stands. Will please you see it and look at her, I said. Fra Pandolf by design, for never read. Strangers like you, that pictured countenance the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none put by the curtains I have drawn for you, but I and seem as they work as me, if they durst. How such glass came there, so not the first, are you to turn and ask thus? Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only, called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheeks, perhaps Brafandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much. Or paint must never hope to reproduce a faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up the spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad. Too easily impressed, she liked whatever she looked on. My favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike an approving speech or blush at least. She thanked men God, but think somehow I know not how as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift who stoop to blame this sort of trifling. Even have you skill in speech with which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one and say, just this or that in you disgust me. Here you miss or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to your forsooth and made excuse, then would be some stooping, and I choose never stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whenever I pass her, but who passed without much the same smile. This grew, I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Will please your eyes, will meet. The company below then, I repeat, the count your master's known magnificence is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for Dory will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though taming a sea-horse through a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. My Last Duchess is a powerful and disturbing poem that offers a chilling glimpse into the dark side of human nature. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of jealousy, possessiveness, and the abuse of power. It also raises questions about the nature of love and the complexities of human relationship. He starts by admiring the painting which looks very lifelike. He mentions the famous artist Frappandolph who painted it in one day, and he points out how only he controls who sees the portrait by droning a curtain over it. The Duke explains that people often wonder about the Duchess' joyful expression in the painting. He suggests that the simple compliment from the artist, like mentioning her clothes or the light on her skin, could make her blush. She was very easily pleased by small things. The Duke feels that his wife was too friendly and smiled at everyone in the same way, even at trivial things like branches of cherries or riding her mule. He felt she treated his important gift, his family name, and status with the same level of appreciation as the small things which upsets him. He implies that he didn't want to stoop or lower himself to argue with her about it. Instead, he gave commands and led her to death, stopping all her smiles together. The Duke casually moves on ready to meet his guest downstairs and hints that he is discussing a future marriage with the Count's daughter. He even shows a bronze of statue he owns, demonstrating his love of controlling and possessing beautiful things just like he did to his last Duchess. The speaker of the poem is the Duke of Vera, a wealthy and powerful nobleman. He is showing the painting of his deceased first wife to an envoy who came to arrange a marriage between the Duke and the emissary's daughter. The poem ends with the Duke continuing to showcase the emissary around his place, as if nothing has happened. This ambiguous ending leaves the reader to ponder the Duke's true intention and the fate of the emissary's daughter. As he describes her, it becomes clear that he is obsessed with her and that he was responsible for her death. He reveals that he was jealous for the natural charm and the ability to engage with others, and he ultimately had her killed. He does reveal enough information to suggest that he was responsible for the death of his first wife. First is too easily impressed. The Duke complains about the Duchess was too easily impressed by things that did not impress him, and that she was too easily pleased. This suggests that he desired a wife that would be entirely devoted to him and only him, and that he found her independent spirit and openness to others unacceptable. And next is I gave command. The Duke chillingly mentions that he gave commands which ultimately led to the Duchess' death. This implies he planned the death of his last Duchess. Key themes. First is power and control. The Duke is a man of immense power and he uses it to control everything and everyone around him, including his wife. Next is possessiveness and jealousy. The Duke is consumed by jealousy and possessiveness. He wants his wife to be entirely his, and he is unable to accept her as an individual with her own thought and feelings because he considered women as object or things rather than human nature. Next is the nature of love. The poem raises questions about the nature of love and whether it is possible to truly love another person without controlling them. The Duke's love is possessive and suffocating and ultimately destroys his wife. So next is the structure of the poem. The poem My Last Duchess has 56 lines in total, and each line has 10 syllables. It is written in a blank verse and it uses iambic pentameter. It is often said to mimic the natural tempo of human speech. Robert used it to create a natural and relaxed flow to Duke's speech, which highlights a Duke's comfort and confidence in his company. The setting, the poem takes place in the Duke's palace in front of his late wife, the Duchess. For the plot, the Duke is showcasing the emissary around his place and he stopped in front of the portrait of his late Duchess. The question: do you think that being with someone possessive and jealous could hinder your personal growth and independence?